That CPD show. My name's Chris Bright and I'll be your host for today. And my guest today is Kirk McAteer. Kirk is from Newcastle, Australia, and has been in full-time ministry since 1999. In 2008, Kirk and his wife, Tracy, felt the call to the United Kingdom in Europe. And in 2009, Kirk, Tracy, and their two children sold everything they owned, said goodbye to their families to follow the call of God and become the new pastors of a church in Birmingham, now called Connects Church. Kirk's also become the chaplain of Birmingham City Football Club. That was in 2013. And Kirk is also the missions director for Assemblies of God UK. Kirk, it's great to have you on the show.
Chris, it is so good to be with you on dessert and development. How exciting.
It's great, isn't it? It's what better things to do than talk about development whilst having some dessert? I can't think of two things better. And for legal reasons, it's nothing like anything that it might sound like. So it's very important that we make that really clear. But before we start talking about development, should we talk about dessert? And maybe we could talk to me about the dessert that you've got your favorite dessert, as it were.
Well, easily one of my experiences of moving to England is new places and new foods, and we had the privilege to travel to Bakewell last year, and so I went to the place in Bakewell in the Peak District, and we went to some cafes there, and they have the best Bakewell tarts I have ever had in my life. And so since that moment, I was converted. I was fully, disciple of Bakewell. so they have all sorts of different types, but yeah, Bakewell tart would be my go-to.
And is the Bakewell from Bakewell, is that, how different are we talking from the kind of the shop bought ones? When you're a connoisseur like me, no, I'm joking.
You can definitely taste the difference. I mean, Bakewell is where they originated. It's the best.
Absolutely. I'm always surprised when I find places in the UK. I'm from the UK, and when you find out actually a Bakewell, I just thought it was baked well. I didn't realize it was from a place called Bakewell. So I'm learning.
Absolutely. So Bakewell tart
fantastic
is my favorite.
Well, my dessert today is a blondie that my wife has baked. But here's the interesting homemade. Here's the interesting twist. The secret ingredient to this blondie is chickpeas.
Oh, okay, healthy.
So, which it sounds quite healthy. It also sounds a little bit hipster, which is probably not what I was wanting to go for. But it is really nice, so I can't complain. So it is a blondie made out of chickpeas, and it tastes good. So what can I say? And I got it with a cup of tea as well. So that's a win.
Yeah. No, I'm a coffee man.
Yes, I'm also coffee, but coffee and tea. I feel like I've got to keep my English side of me going, which is great. Should we talk about resources?
Absolutely.
We've got three prepared. Why don't you introduce me to your first one, and we'll have a little chat around it.
I thought I'd go with books, Chris, just to keep it nice and simple and accessible for everyone. But I guess before I say that, I'm definitely not. Reading is something that doesn't come natural to me as a leader. I know leaders are readers. I know we've got to read wide and continue to resource ourselves with books. I recently one of my mentors was telling me he learned speed reading, and so it's definitely something I need to grow and get better in. So I will talk about books, but I'm kind of like an experiential learner. I recently went on our family just went on a holiday to Belgium, and we wanted to do a tour of some of the war memorials, being Australian and wanting to just see some of those places where the Aussie soldiers went. And we ended up in a place called Ypres, I think I pronounced that right, and Meningate. And what it was, it's basically the front line of the Western Front of World War One, and it was the last point where they would leave freedom, so to speak, or the Allies, and then go over into the war zone. And there was a museum there, and we're in there for about 2 to 2.5 hours, and I learnt more in that museum that about World War One that I probably have from snippets and bits of education and documentaries in my life. And so I'm definitely an experiential learner, to taste it, touch it, feel it, experience it, smell it. Is definitely how I learn best. I know last year I got to go to the ancient ruins of Corinth, and just the Bible came to life, and so I'm an experiential learner. I like conferences. Conferences are good. I don't always retain all the information. It's a bit of information overload at conferences. And probably the other best way I learn is coaching. We have a few people that coach us and really come alongside, and that accountability and tracking development and your life. So they're probably the main ways I learn. However, we do want to talk about books, and so my first book, and probably the best place to start, is a book here called The Emotional Healthy Leader. The Emotional Healthy Leader. The author is Pete Scazzero. He's not just done this book. There's Emotional Healthy Discipleship, Emotional Healthy Spirituality. There's a whole website. It's his ministry. There's also small group resources that you can teach in your church. So it's a whole lot of teaching. But yeah, emotional healthy leadership.
Great. So for those who haven't read the book or heard of the book, give me a kind of a really short little précis of, what's the book touching on? What's it trying to talk about? Tell me a little about, I mean, I've not read it. I think it's on my bookshelf and I've not read it yet. So tell me about it. What's the book about?
I think for me it was significant because as a leader, particularly growing up in Australia, I suppose I'll talk about that context. Leadership was fast paced, results driven, success bigger, better, and that actually doesn't allow for some of the spiritual disciplines of Sabbath and solitude and rest and coming from that internal place. Pete Scazzero himself was pastoring a church, and it was growing, but he found himself with all these emotions inside from his family of origin that were damaging his marriage, his relationship with his staff, and the way he related to his church, and he found this internal battle going on from hurt and pain that people would cause in the church, and experiences that he would go through. And so he was trying to reconcile this, and it nearly brought him to a point of burnout. In fact, he says in his book, his wife actually basically said, "Look, I'm leaving the church," because it got so bad. He talks about being an emotional infant, and then an emotional adolescent, and then emotional maturity. And it really is, thinking about the iceberg. We as leaders, people see the tip of the iceberg is our outward world, but actually what's really more important is what's underneath. And so it's a book that challenges our internal world, our emotions, our reactions, our thinking, the stuff that no one sees. Where did that come from? Big on family of origin. One of his classic lines is, Jesus might live in your heart, but grandpa lives in your bones. And just that reality that, you may have a regenerated, transformed heart, and Jesus is there, but if you are not aware or willing to work through the baggage, I suppose, for want of a better word, of some of the stuff of your family of origin, how you grew up, and work through that, then it's going to be a lid on your life, relationships, and leadership.
No, that's really fascinating. I think, and already, you can start to think of how for church leaders that's going to be massively impactful. And I think we often don't know what we don't know sometimes.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And I think, reading a book that's going to kind of help you unpack, okay, this is going to help me know more about myself and uncover the things the things that I don't know. Sounds great. How is it? What will be the impacts that it's had on you, or maybe the change that you've seen that book have on your life?
Yeah, I think I'm just a lot more aware of my what I call, and I think Pete Scazzero calls, triggers. What's triggering my emotion? Why did I react that way? He has this little saying about, what in any given moment, just pause and what's making you sad, mad, glad, or bad, and being really honest with your emotions and allowing God into the depths of your pain or your hurts or your weaknesses. And of course, the ministry is very gentle, and the teachings, about in our weakness his power is made perfect. And so finding our true identity in Christ, in God, not in what we do. Talks a lot about being a human being, not a human doing. And I guess for me, my nature, I'm a high energy, passionate, let's get it done, change the world kind of person. And it's just helped me stay a bit balanced, because I'm a doer. I want to do. But at the end of the day, Jesus isn't interested in what I do. He's interested in who I am with him, and that my security, my everything of who I am comes out of who I am with Jesus first, not what I do or what other people think. And so it's that really coming to that place where you're really comfortable with God and who he's made you and who he's trying to allow you to become, and being really comfortable in your own skin.
I'm reminded that, Jesus didn't say, "Well done, good and successful servant."
Yeah.
It's good and faithful servant, and that's a sense of being first, and following Jesus is about as much being as it is doing. That doing, of course, is an aspect to it. Every pastor will know that. But that sense of starting from a place of being just sounds great. Have you seen it have an impact in your church? How has it changed how you lead a church, or has it had a specific impact maybe in how you do church at all?
Yeah, look, I think it definitely makes you more aware of where people are coming from, and also the way I navigate relationships with people. So as you're probably aware, Chris, pastors aren't always the most popular person, and we sometimes offend people. But that's they're coming from their place that they're working through, and so I don't take that on board, and I try and stay calm and patient and just journey with them through whatever the challenge or the conflict might be. So the way I deal with people, it's like I said, there's a small group resource, so we try and encourage people to do that within the church. So there's a culture of talking about emotional health. The podcast, I mean, this isn't just a book you read once. It's a continual process, a lifelong process, really. So I'm continually listening to Pete Scaro's podcast and just processing different things, because in every season of life you're dealing with different emotions and different what is happening inside you in that season, particularly as you get older and mature a bit more, you've got more to process. So it's definitely changed the way I lead and live. My marriage as well, we talk a lot about it, my wife and I, about emotional adolescence, which sometimes I still fall in that category.
Yeah, it sounds like a really interesting book, not just for the pastor, but also for every. It's one of those things that I think you could take a whole. Sounds like you could take a whole church through this book, and I think the benefits of of a whole church being more emotionally healthy, so that how we interact with each other, how we confront one another, those kind of things, which are so important in church life. We have those kind of things. So
absolutely, especially dealing with conflict. I mean, even on a staff team, how each person manages, handles feedback and criticism, and so much of that stems from your family of origin, and if they're not aware, it can cause a lot of challenge. And so we've tried to help our teams learn more about themselves and how they relate with other people.
Great. Should we move on to resource number 2? What's your second book?
Well, not too far behind that is a book called The Blessed Life by Pastor Robert Morris, and he's based over in the US. And this is a book that, so continuing on the whole family of origin theme. I love my dad dearly. He's a great man, and he loves me very much. And he became a Christian when he was in his late 30s, and but he was originally born in Scotland and moved over to Australia when he was 19. But he was an only child, and money was tight, and coming off the back of World War II rations, and so he wasn't the most generous person, and so he was I'm trying to be kind to him, very tight with his money, and everything was about the cost. Instead of enjoying a meal out, he'd be thinking about the cost, and it became a bit of a joke in our family. Dad never opens his wallet, but I realized as I got a bit older that this was something that I'd some behavior and learned habits that I'd taken on from him. And so that whole area of generosity had to be broken over my life as I became a Christian and became, started following Jesus. And this particular book just helped shift so much in my theology and my practice of how I view finances, how I manage finances. And for me as a pastor, I believe discipling people in financial theology and understanding and management is so crucial. We can't just deal with their spiritual side, their theology. We can't just deal with their emotions, which we talked about in book 1, but we have to deal with their finances. 15% of Jesus' parables were about wealth and finances, and there's over 2,300 verses in the Bible about money and wealth and possessions. And I believe, particularly in our age of consumerism and materialism, this is the thing that has gripped the heart of our generation, and we have to allow them to be set free in this area of money. Jesus says, you can't serve mammon and God. You can't serve two masters. And so I personally was set free from it, and I think it's something that can really help Christians.
Great, yeah. So let's dive into that kind of the theology of giving, because I think you're absolutely right. I think money has traditionally always been quite a contentious topic in the church. There are some who find it difficult to talk about money, and there are certain preconceptions of when you bring the word money or talking about money in church, that people can think different ways in terms of maybe it's more of a prosperity side of things, or a frugality kind of thing. Where does this kind of book land in that kind of sphere of things?
Yeah, look, it definitely obviously the title, The Blessed Life. However, the way Robert Morris takes you on a journey is he really does hit to the issue of it being a heart issue, and being putting Jesus first and putting God first. It talks about, takes people on a journey of stewardship, realizing that I think a lot of people, before they're a Christian, they just think everything's mine, it all belongs to me, and I have authority over my stuff. And then when they become a Christian, I think, most Christians probably do get to that place where they go, I give 10% to God, I honor God because I want to obey him, but the rest of the 90%, that's mine, and I still have authority over my stuff. But really where this book wants to take us to is a place where we understand that everything is God's, nothing is ours, and we give him, he has authority over his stuff, and we're just stewards for a season on this earth of not just money, but our time, our relationships, everything. So it takes you on a journey from, really just understanding about what it is to give and tithe, right through to then what he calls extravagant giving, and that's a whole nother level of giving and sacrifice and trusting God. It really takes a person to that point where their trust and their hope is in God the provider, not in a salary, not in an economic cult, environment or system, but actually God is their provider. So it's a really good discipleship tool.
No, that's really good. And how have you used this in your church? Has it become part of teaching material or small group
Yeah.
material?
Yep. Yeah. We did actually a whole series on it and encouraged people to get the book. We've also, I've also taught it. There's a 6-week Bible study with it as well. And so I did that in a Connect group, and incredibly, the tides went up. The teaching is that simple but practical, and truth. Really, it's just the truth, and people respond to it straight away. And we've seen incredible testimonies of, as people shift their priorities of their finances, how God has released blessing over their lives.
Yeah, I love that. I think that sounds like a really exciting book, because not just because the result of tithes could go up, and that's
Yes.
obviously a lovely thing.
Everyone's going to go out and buy it
now. But I think the heart change in someone when they start to see everything as God's.
Yeah.
That's a humongous paradigm shift for people in the congregation. So sounds like an absolutely fantastic resource.
And it's challenging. I mean, it talks about exposing a poverty spirit as well, and which like I said, I had to go on a journey of allowing God to deal with some stuff in me.
Fantastic, brilliant. All right, well, let's go on to the your final book.
All right.
Yeah, introduce to me your final book.
So this is I mean, I know it's audio, so the people listening can't see it, but you'll see the dirty coffee stains. This is a well-worn book. This is called Simple Church, Returning to God's Process for Making Disciples, by Thomas Rayner and Eric Giger, I think his name is.
Geiger.
There we go.
Yes.
It's the Aussie slang on there. Geiger. So this book came at a time in around 2008. My wife and I'd been on staff 10 years, and it was around about that time we were sensing the call of God to England and Europe. We didn't know it was England and Europe at that point, but just to go from associate pastors to senior pastors somewhere in the world, anywhere in the world. And we were just going, we were really searching our hearts and our theology of church, our eschatology. What if we could start a church or plant a church or take on a church, what would be the culture? What would be the philosophy? And we'd come from a great church. We were very blessed, but I would say it was a church that was program driven, and was Sunday services and events driven is probably the best way to put it. But we just knew events don't make disciples, and programs don't necessarily help people go to spiritual maturity. So we were passionate about seeing a strong discipleship model church. And so someone recommended this book to me, and it absolutely articulated everything that we were feeling in our hearts of what we wanted to see. And really, it like its name suggests, Simple Church, it's about helping put strategies in place so that you can keep the main thing and make disciples.
Oh, that's great. I've read that book. I've probably read that book cover to cover at least 3 times, and yes. I can vouch that it's been very impactful in my church, and we worked through that and worked that through as the leadership team of the church. We worked through that, and it's been really, really impactful. What changes did that book make for you in terms of how you started it? You know, what decisions did it help you make or not make? You know, or things to do or things not to do as a church.
Yeah, no, great question. And the beauty was we had the opportunity to put a lot of it in place, because when we moved over here and took on the church here in Birmingham, we had a season where we had an open window really to bring change and to establish new patterns. And so we were able to apply a lot of the principles. So really it's about clarity, movement, alignment, and focus. It's about really that how do you bring someone through from that doesn't know Jesus through to become a disciple maker. How do you make disciples? What is your process that everybody in the church knows and is reproducible? And so we were able to establish 3 words: worship, love, serve. And those we preached about that, we taught about that, and now I would hope that if you came to our church and anyone said, "Hey, what's Connect Church all about?" they'd be able to say those 3 words. And simply, the worship is obviously someone's individual worship to God, putting Him first, but also then it's also, as a church, that's our Sunday expression of and love is everything to do with discipleship and pastoral care, and that a person would love themselves, learn to love themselves through things like emotional healthy spirituality and different discipleship groups, and then also love others. So you build community, and a community of God's people that is diverse but unified through love. And then serve, that people would find their purpose. What are they on the planet for? Discover their mission. And then as a church, that's how we then outwork our engagement in local community and global community. So really those 3 things: worship is our Sunday expression and everything about what we present and communicate. Love is about our discipleship programs and pastoral care. And then serve is everything we do that's outward focused to see the church impact and influence its community. So the whole of our church is established on the principles of this book.
No, that's great. Have you found that it's helpful? I've certainly found it helpful in my church. It's in church life. We all know that lots of people want to start ministries, and
Yes.
This is about keeping it simple. How does it help you say no to the right things and yes to the right, no to the wrong things and yes to the right things?
No, that's a good question. We have a filter church, and it starts with the vision, and then these 3 words: worship, love, serve, and then our values, and then our goals for the year. And so basically, if someone comes with a suggestion, we say we go through a tick box. Does it achieve the vision? Does it achieve our worship, love, serves? Does it fit in one of those? Is it part? Can we find our values where it's represented? But then our final filter point, which is where we say yes or no to things, is: does it achieve the goal for this year? So if it might be a great idea and even tick some of the other boxes, but if it doesn't fit the goal for this year, then we're going to put it on hold.
No, that's really, really good. And I've certainly found it really helpful and I've helped churches through this. When you're trying to work out, we've got loads of ministries, and so many churches have that problem of loads of ministries. And how can you reduce that down? And actually what you can find is that you can do so much more in terms of discipleship through less. And so it's a great resource, and I'd certainly recommend it, and glad that you brought it on the podcast today.
It's a challenge. I have to go back to this book as well all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's certainly one of those books where it's worth at least 2 reads, I would say. Well,
absolutely.
Kirk, thank you so much for joining me today. Do you have any kind of final thoughts or anything just to add at the end?
Oh, look, I think the thing I love about CPD and how we're introducing it to the AOG is lifelong learning. We never stop learning and being interested, and I think that's one of our passions and one of our values that we want in every pastor out there. And I guess the 3 I've brought are just key areas of discipleship for me, and I think for any leader out there is your emotional health, your internal world, financial health, stewarding your finances, but also the churches, and how to raise finances. We'll release ministry, and of course ministry health, how to have a really clear focus on what you're called to do and your expression in your local church. So that's why I thought I'd bring those 3 resources today.
Kirk, thank you so much for joining us today, and looking forward to getting some of those books and giving them a read, actually. So thanks so much.
No worries, mate. Thank you. Enjoy your blondie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.